The words still echo in my head like a death sentence. Apologize to him or get out of my house. My mother's voice sharp as broken glass, cutting through 26 years of what I thought was unconditional love. Standing in our family living room, staring at my half-brother Marcus smirking behind her, I felt my world collapse. "Got it," I whispered, grabbing my keys. Walking away from that house, I had no idea I was about to uncover a web of lies that would destroy everything I believed about my family and ultimately give me the sweetest revenge imaginable. Before we dive into this wild family drama that literally changed my life forever, I need to know, are you watching from your phone or computer? Either way, this story is going to blow your mind. Hit that like button if you have ever felt betrayed by family, and make sure to subscribe, because trust me, you will want to hear how this revenge story unfolds. The twists coming up are absolutely insane. My name is Serafina, and until 3 months ago, I thought I knew my family. I worked as a financial analyst, living in the modest apartment I could afford while sending money home to help with family expenses. My mother, Patricia, had always been the center of our world, a widow who raised me after my father died when I was 8. When she remarried Tom 5 years later and had Marcus White, embraced my role as the responsible older daughter. That night, when I walked out, I went straight to my best friend Luna's apartment, tears streaming down my face. "What happened?" she asked, pulling me inside. Through broken sobs, I told her about the argument that had been brewing for weeks. It started when I questioned why Marcus, now 21, was driving a brand new BMW, while claiming he needed money for college tuition. I had been contributing $500 monthly to his education fund money I scraped together by living on ramen and skipping meals. When I saw him posting Instagram stories from expensive restaurants and designer shopping trips, I confronted him. "Mind your own business," he had sneered. "Not everyone needs to live like a broke loser." When I brought this to my mother expecting support, she instead defended him. "Marcus works hard. He deserves nice things." But when I asked what job he had, she became evasive. That is when the real argument began. "You have always been jealous of Marcus," she accused. "Ever since your father died, you have resented that I found happiness again." The accusation hit like a physical blow. I had never been jealous. I had been grateful she found love again. I had welcomed Tom and Marcus into our family, even though it meant sharing my mother's attention. I had worked extra jobs to help support our larger family unit. "All I want to know is where the tuition money is going," I said calmly. That is when Tom entered the conversation, his voice condescending. "Serafina, Marcus is a good kid. Maybe if you focused on your own life instead of controlling everyone else's, you would be happier." The conversation escalated quickly. Marcus accused me of being bitter about my own failures. I had been laid off from my previous job 6 months earlier and was still rebuilding my career. He said I was taking out my frustrations on him because I was jealous he had everything handed to him. "At least I work for what I have," I shot back. "I have never asked for handouts." That is when Marcus laughed a cruel, mocking sound. "Work for what? Your tiny apartment and your secondhand clothes, face it. Serafina, you are a failure, and you cannot stand that I am successful." I felt something snap inside me. Successful at what exactly? Living off Mom and Tom while pretending to be in college. The room went silent. Then my mother exploded. "How dare you question this family? Marcus is in college and he works harder than you ever have. You owe him an apology right now, or you can get out of my house." Standing there looking at the three of them, my mother, stepfather, and half-brother all staring at me with identical expressions of contempt, I realized something had fundamentally shifted in our family dynamic. This was not about tuition money anymore. This was about power respect, and apparently I had none. "Got it," I said quietly, and walked out. At Luna's apartment, as I recounted the story, she listened with growing concern. "Sarah, this does not add up," she said finally. Your mom has always been reasonable. Something else is going on here. She was right. Over the next few days, little details began bothering me. How could Marcus afford his lifestyle on a college student budget? Why was my mother so defensive about simple questions? And why did Tom seem so eager to paint me as the problem? I decided to do what I do best. Follow the money trail. It started innocently enough. I called Marcus's college to verify his enrollment for a family emergency contact update. The registrar's office was helpful. "I am sorry, but we do not have a Marcus Thompson in our current enrollment system," the woman said. My blood ran cold. "Can you check if he was previously enrolled but dropped out?" "I can see he was enrolled for one semester 2 years ago but withdrew after failing most of his classes. There is no recent enrollment." I hung up my hands shaking. Marcus had been lying about college for 2 years. 2 years of tuition payments, 2 years of family gatherings where he talked about his classes and professors, 2 years of my mother proudly telling relatives about her son's academic achievements. But if he was not in school, where was the money going? That evening, I drove past Tom's business, a small construction company. I had always assumed it was modestly successful enough to support their comfortable lifestyle, but nothing extravagant. What I saw made me question everything. The parking lot was filled with expensive equipment I had never seen before. Brand new trucks, a fleet of them, all bearing Tom's company logo. Through the office window, I could see Marcus inside, feet up on a desk, talking animatedly on the phone. I sat in my car for over an hour watching. Employees came and went, but Marcus never moved from that desk. He was not a college student working part-time. He was working at Tom's company in what appeared to be a management position. The next morning, I called in sick to work and did something I had never done before. I hired a private investigator. It cost me $800 I could not afford, but I needed answers. "I want to know about my family's finances." I told the investigator, a middle-aged woman named Detective Rodriguez. Something is not adding up. Within a week, she called me back. "We need to meet in person," she said, her voice grim. Detective Rodriguez and I met at a coffee shop downtown, away from anywhere I might run into family. She slid a manila folder across the table, her expression serious. "Serafina, I need to prepare you. What I found is going to be difficult to hear." I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were bank statements, business records, and photographs that made my stomach drop. "Your stepfather Tom has been systematically defrauding his business for the past 3 years, she began. "He has been inflating invoices, billing for work never completed, and skimming money from client payments. The estimated total is over $200,000. I stared at the documents, trying to process. But how does this connect to Marcus? Your half-brother is not just aware of the fraud, he is actively participating. He has been creating fake invoices, manipulating client records, and helping launder the stolen money through various accounts." She pointed to a series of bank transfers. Every month, $3,500 moves from the business account to a personal account under Marcus's name. My monthly $500 contributions suddenly made sense in a sick, twisted way. While I was sacrificing my own financial stability to support what I thought was his education, Marcus was pulling in 7 times that amount through criminal activity. "There is more," Rodriguez continued. "Your mother is not just aware of this, she is the mastermind." The world tilted. "What do you mean?" "Patricia has been the one coordinating the fraud scheme. She maintains separate books, creates false documentation, and has been the primary contact with several clients who have been systematically overcharged. She even opened credit lines using the business as collateral for personal purchases." Rodriguez showed me photographs of my mother at a bank depositing large checks, credit card statements showing luxury purchases, jewelry, designer clothes, expensive dinners, all charged to business accounts, but clearly for personal use. The BMW Marcus drives, purchased through the business as a company vehicle, but used entirely for personal transportation. the designer clothes, the expensive meals you questioned, all paid for with stolen money. I felt physically sick. How long has this been going on? The serious fraud started about 6 months after Tom married your mother. Small amounts at first, but it escalated significantly over the past 2 years. She paused, looking at me with sympathy. Serafina, there is something else. The timing of when you started contributing monthly payments to Marcus's education fund, it coincides exactly with when they needed to reduce the amount they were stealing to avoid detection by their accountant. The realization hit like a physical blow. They had manipulated me into funding their criminal lifestyle while making me feel guilty for questioning their expenses. My contributions had not been going toward education, they had been subsidizing fraud. We have documented evidence of federal crimes, Rodriguez continued. Mail fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. This is not just a family dispute. This is a criminal enterprise. I sat in stunned silence, staring at the evidence spread before me. Photos of Marcus laughing with friends at expensive restaurants. Bank records showing my mother had purchased a $15,000 bracelet the same week she had asked me to contribute extra money for Marcus's textbooks. Credit statements revealing Tom had been charging personal vacations to business accounts while telling clients the trips were for work purposes. What happens now? I finally asked. That depends on what you want to do with this information, Rodriguez said. I can connect you with federal investigators who handle financial crimes. With this evidence, they could build a case that would result in serious prison time for all 3 of them. I thought about that night when my mother had demanded I apologize or leave. How they had all looked at me like I was the problem, like I was the one damaging the family with my reasonable questions. How Marcus had called me a failure while he was literally stealing for a living. How my mother had chosen defending criminals over supporting her daughter who had been nothing but loyal and generous. I need some time to think, I said. Take all the time you need. But Serafina, you should know this operation is getting bigger and more reckless. Eventually, they are going to get caught whether you report them or not. The question is whether you want to be the one who ensures justice is served properly. I drove home in a daze, the folder of evidence sitting on my passenger seat like a loaded weapon. For 26 years, I had believed my family loved and respected me. I had worked extra jobs to support them, sacrificed my own comfort to ensure they had what they needed, and defended them when others criticized their choices. Now I knew the truth. They had seen me as nothing more than a convenient source of funding for their criminal lifestyle. They had manipulated my love and loyalty to supplement their fraud scheme. And when I had started asking reasonable questions, they had tried to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem. That night I called Luna and asked her to come over. When she arrived, I spread the evidence across my kitchen table. "Oh my God," she whispered, flipping through bank statements. "Sarah, this is massive. They are criminals." "I know," I said quietly. "And I have been funding them." Luna grabbed my hands. "You had no way of knowing. You were trying to help family. There is nothing wrong with that." "But what do I do now if I report them? They go to prison. My mother, my half-brother, they could be locked up for years." "And if you do not report them, they keep stealing from innocent people," Luna pointed out. "How many small business owners are they cheating? How many families are paying inflated prices because your stepfather is padding invoices?" She was right. This was not just about my family anymore. Tom's construction company worked primarily with middle-class homeowners and small businesses, people who trusted him to be honest about pricing and work quality. Every fraudulent invoice meant some family was paying more than they should for home repairs. Every padded estimate meant a small business was being cheated. I spent the next 3 days wrestling with the decision. Part of me wanted to confront them directly to give them a chance to explain or make things right. But every time I considered it, I remembered that night in the living room, the contempt in their voices, the way they had made me feel like I was crazy for asking basic questions, the cruel satisfaction in Marcus's eyes when my mother had given me an ultimatum. They had made their choice when they decided to lie to me, steal from others, and treat me like an enemy for caring about truth and honesty. On Thursday morning, I made the call that would change everything. Federal Bureau of Investigation, how can I help you? I need to report financial crimes. I said, my voice steady for the first time in days. I have documented evidence of ongoing fraud, and I think you are going to want to see this. Special Agent Rebecca Martinez met me at the FBI field office downtown 3 days after my initial call. The federal building felt intimidating, but Agent Martinez had a warm, professional demeanor that put me at ease. Before we begin, I want you to understand the seriousness of what you are reporting, she said as we settled into a conference room. Financial fraud at this scale typically results in federal charges with significant prison sentences. Are you prepared for that possibility? I thought of Marcus's smirk, my mother's ultimatum, and Tom's condescending voice. Yes, I said firmly. I am prepared. Agent Martinez reviewed Detective Rodriguez's evidence methodically, asking detailed questions about my family relationships, the timeline of events, and my personal knowledge of the business operations. After 2 hours, she leaned back in her chair. This is substantial, she said. But we need more current evidence to build an airtight case. Would you be willing to help us gather additional documentation? The request sent chills down my spine. What would that involve? We would need you to maintain normal contact with your family while wearing a recording device during conversations. We would also need access to any financial records you might have, and potentially your cooperation in documenting ongoing fraudulent activities. The thought of facing my family again, pretending everything was normal while secretly recording them, felt overwhelming. But then I remembered all the clients Tom's company had cheated all the families who had paid inflated prices for construction work. What kind of timeline are we looking at? If you agree to cooperate, we could have enough evidence for arrests within 4 to 6 weeks. The investigation would likely take several months, but the initial arrests could happen quickly. I spent the weekend considering the proposal. Luna was supportive but worried about my emotional well-being. This is going to be incredibly difficult, she warned. Pretending to reconcile with people who betrayed you while secretly building a case against them. She was right, but I had made my decision. On Monday morning, I called Agent Martinez. I will do it. The FBI equipped me with a tiny recording device and coached me on how to naturally steer conversations toward business topics without raising suspicion. My first challenge was re-establishing contact with my family after our dramatic confrontation. I decided to approach my mother with a carefully crafted apology. I called her Tuesday evening, putting genuine emotion into my voice. Mom, I have been thinking about our fight, and I realize I was out of line. I should not have questioned Marcus or made accusations about the family. Can we talk? There was a long pause before she responded. I am glad you called, honey. I have been hoping you would come to your senses. The condescending tone made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to sound contrite. I miss you, and I miss being part of the family. I know I overreacted. Well, Marcus was very hurt by what you said, and Tom feels like you do not respect him as your stepfather. Perfect. She was already providing evidence of how they had framed the situation. I want to make things right with both of them. Can I come over this weekend? Maybe I can apologize in person. I think that would be wonderful, Serafina. And honey, I think you should consider why you got so upset about Marcus's success. Maybe some therapy would help you work through these jealousy issues. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. You might be right, Mom. I will think about that. Saturday afternoon, I drove to my childhood home with a recording device tucked into my jacket pocket. Walking up the familiar driveway felt surreal, knowing I was about to gather evidence that could send my family to prison. My mother greeted me with a hug that felt hollow. I am so glad you came, sweetheart. Tom and Marcus are in the living room. The 3 of them were waiting for me like a tribunal. I sat across from them, my heart pounding, and began my performance. I want to apologize to all of you, I said, making eye contact with each of them. I was completely wrong to question Marcus about his expenses or suggest anything improper was happening. I realized I was being jealous and controlling. Marcus leaned back in his chair, satisfaction obvious on his face. I appreciate you saying that, Serafina. It takes maturity to admit when you are wrong. I guess I was just stressed about my own financial situation and took it out on you, I continued. Seeing you doing so well with school and your job made me feel bad about my own struggles. That got Tom's attention. You know Marcus has been doing excellent work at the company. He has a real head for business. Really? What kind of work has he been doing? I asked, trying to sound interested rather than investigative. Client relations, project management, invoice coordination, Tom said proudly. He has helped us expand our client base significantly over the past year. Marcus jumped in eagerly. Yeah, I have been learning all aspects of the business. Invoice processing, client billing, vendor relationships. Tom has been teaching me everything. My pulse quickened. They were handing me exactly the kind of admissions the FBI needed. That sounds like great experience, I said. Are you still planning to finish college, or are you thinking about staying with the business long term? A brief look passed between Marcus and Tom before Marcus answered. Well, college was not really working out for me. This hands-on business experience is much more valuable than sitting in classrooms. My mother chimed in. We are so proud of how well Marcus is doing. The business has been thriving, and he is a big part of that success. The construction industry must be booming, I observed. I noticed all the new equipment in the company parking lot. Tom's chest puffed out with pride. We have been investing in growth. Better equipment, expanded services, higher value contracts. It is all about positioning yourself in the market. Higher value contracts sound impressive. Are you working with bigger commercial clients now? Some commercial work, but also premium residential projects. Tom explained. Clients who want quality work and are willing to pay for it. We have really refined our pricing structure to reflect the value we provide. I nodded enthusiastically. That makes sense. You deserve to be compensated fairly for quality work. Over the next 2 hours, I managed to record them discussing their refined pricing structure, Marcus's role in invoice coordination, and several specific mentions of recent projects. They spoke openly about their financial success, their new equipment purchases, and their expansion plans. Most damaging of all, when I mentioned struggling with my own finances, my mother suggested I might benefit from learning the business, like Marcus had. Maybe you could help out part-time, she said. Tom could teach you about invoice management and client billing. It has been very profitable for Marcus. The casual way they discussed involving me in what I now knew was a criminal operation made me feel sick. They were not just thieves, they were actively trying to recruit me as an accomplice. When I left that afternoon, I had over 2 hours of recorded conversations that clearly established their roles in the fraud scheme. Agent Martinez was ecstatic when I delivered the recordings the following Monday. This is exactly what we needed, she said after reviewing the audio. They have essentially confessed to their roles in the operation on tape. But Agent Martinez had more news for me. We have been investigating Tom's business from other angles as well, and we discovered something interesting. One of his recent clients filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau about invoice discrepancies. We reached out to her, and she agreed to cooperate with our investigation. The client was a woman named Mrs. Eleanor Vasquez, a widow who had hired Tom's company to repair her roof after storm damage. She had paid nearly $15,000 for work that other contractors estimated should have cost $8,000. She saved every piece of documentation, Agent Martinez explained. Quotes, invoices, work orders, even photos of the completed work. When she got suspicious about the pricing, she had 2 other contractors review the work and provide estimates for what it should have cost. Mrs. Vasquez agreed to meet with me the following week. I was nervous about facing someone my family had cheated, but she turned out to be a remarkably gracious woman in her 70s. I am sorry you are going through this family situation, she said when we met at a restaurant near her home. But I want you to know how grateful I am that someone is finally holding them accountable. She told me her story in detail. After her husband died, she had struggled to maintain their home on a fixed income. When storm damage required roof repairs, she had gotten several quotes, but chose Tom's company because they had seemed honest and trustworthy. Your stepfather was very charming, she said. He explained why his prices were higher, better materials, superior workmanship, comprehensive warranties. He made me feel like I was making a smart investment in my home's future. But when the work was completed, she had become suspicious. The materials they used were clearly not premium quality. The work was adequate, but nothing special. When I researched the actual cost of the materials and labor, I realized I had been significantly overcharged. Mrs. Vasquez had tried to address the issue directly with Tom's company, but was dismissed. Marcus handled my complaint. He was rude and condescending, telling me I did not understand construction costs and should be grateful for the quality work they had provided. Hearing Marcus's name in this context, knowing he had personally dismissed this elderly woman's legitimate concerns while pocketing money from her overcharged invoice, filled me with rage. How many other people do you think they have cheated? I asked. Based on what the FBI has shared with me, at least 20 families over the past 2 years. Mostly older homeowners, small business owners, people who trusted them, to be honest. That night, I called Agent Martinez with a new request. I want to help you find all their victims. Every family they have cheated deserves justice, and I want to make sure you have every piece of evidence possible to put them away for as long as the law allows. Are you sure you are ready for that level of involvement, Serafina? This could take months, and it means staying in contact with your family while building a comprehensive case against them. I thought about Mrs. Vasquez trying to maintain her home on a fixed income while grieving her husband, only to be cheated and dismissed by my family. I thought about Marcus's cruel laughter when he had called me a failure. I thought about my mother choosing criminals over her own daughter. Yes, I said. I am absolutely sure. Let us get every single one of them. For 3 weeks, our operation proceeded perfectly. I continued my charade of family reconciliation while secretly gathering evidence with Agent Martinez. We had identified 12 additional victims and collected mountains of documentation proving systematic fraud. I felt like we were building an unbreakable case that would finally deliver justice. Then, Detective Rodriguez called me on a Wednesday evening, her voice strangely formal. Serafina, we need to meet immediately. There has been a development in your case. Something in her tone made my stomach drop. What kind of development? I cannot discuss it over the phone. Can you meet me at the coffee shop where we first talked, tonight at 8? I arrived early, my nerves on edge. When Rodriguez walked in, she looked different. Uncomfortable, almost guilty. She slid into the booth across from me without her usual confident demeanor. I need to tell you something that is going to be very difficult to hear, she began. My blood turned to ice. What happened? Your family knows about the investigation. The words hit like a physical blow. What do you mean they know? Rodriguez could not meet my eyes. Tom contacted me yesterday. He said he had heard I was conducting a private investigation into his family's finances and wanted to discuss the situation. I stared at her in disbelief. How could he possibly know that... Serafina. I need to be honest with you about something. When you first hired me, I thought this was a straightforward family dispute. I did not realize we would uncover federal crimes or that the FBI would become involved. A terrible realization began forming in my mind. What are you saying? Tom offered me $50,000 to provide him with copies of all the evidence I had gathered and to testify that you had asked me to fabricate documents to frame your family. The betrayal felt like drowning. And you took it. Rodriguez finally looked at me, her expression a mixture of shame and defiance. Do you have any idea what $50,000 means to someone in my position? I have been struggling to keep my investigation business afloat for 3 years. My daughter needs surgery we cannot afford. This money could change our lives. I could barely breathe. You sold me out. You sold out every family they have cheated. It is not that simple, she said desperately. Tom convinced me that you were having some kind of mental breakdown after being cut off from family money. He showed me bank records proving you have been financially dependent on them for years. He said you were trying to destroy them out of spite because they stopped supporting you. And you believed him over your own evidence. The evidence could be interpreted different ways, Rodriguez said defensively. Business accounting can look suspicious when you do not understand the full context. Maybe there were legitimate explanations for the discrepancies. I felt like I was going insane. You saw the fake invoices. You saw the money transfers. You documented the lies about Marcus being in college. People change career paths all the time, and family businesses often have informal accounting practices that might look irregular to outsiders. Rodriguez had rationalized away everything she had discovered, choosing money over truth. But worse than her betrayal was what it meant for our case. What exactly did you give them? Copies of all the financial documents, the photographs, the surveillance reports, everything. My hands were shaking. Did you tell them about the FBI investigation? Rodriguez hesitated. I might have mentioned that you had contacted federal authorities. The full scope of the disaster hit me. Not only had Rodriguez destroyed our element of surprise, but she had provided my family with detailed knowledge of exactly what evidence existed against them. They would have time to destroy records coach witnesses and prepare legal defenses. I called Agent Martinez immediately from the parking lot. They know everything, I said when she answered. Rodriguez sold us out. There was a long pause. How much do they know? Everything. All our evidence, the fact that we are working together, the names of victims we have contacted. Rodriguez gave them a complete roadmap of our investigation. Agent Martinez was quiet for a moment. Can you get somewhere safe tonight? Do not go home, and do not contact your family. Why, what happens now? Now they know they are under federal investigation, they might try to intimidate you into backing down. Or worse, they might try to frame you as a disgruntled family member making false accusations. I spent that night at Luna's apartment feeling like everything I had worked for was crumbling. Luna tried to reassure me, but we both knew the betrayal was catastrophic. Maybe Rodriguez was right about one thing, I said miserably. Maybe I should have just walked away and let them continue their crimes. At least then, Mrs. Vasquez and the other victims might have eventually gotten justice through other channels. Do not you dare blame yourself for this, Luna said firmly. Rodriguez made a choice to take dirty money. That is on her, not you. The next morning brought worse news. Agent Martinez called to inform me that Tom had hired a prominent criminal defense attorney and was claiming I had attempted to extort money from the family by threatening to make false accusations to federal authorities. They are trying to flip the narrative, she explained. According to their story, you approached Rodriguez to help you fabricate evidence because you were angry about being financially cut off from the family. But we have recordings of them confessing to the crimes, which they will claim were taken without their knowledge and possibly edited or taken out of context. With Rodriguez backing their version of events, it becomes much more complicated to prosecute. I felt physically sick. So they are going to get away with everything. Not necessarily, Agent Martinez said. But we need to be extremely careful about how we proceed. They have shown they are willing to fight dirty, and they now have insider knowledge of our investigation. That afternoon, I received a text message from Marcus that made my blood run cold. Heard you have been spreading lies about the family. Might want to be careful about making false accusations. People who make up stories about others sometimes find themselves in legal trouble. The threat was clear. They were not just going to defend themselves, they were going to try to destroy me. Luna found me crying on her couch that evening. I should have listened to you from the beginning, I sobbed. I should have just cut ties with them and moved on with my life. Now I have made everything worse for everyone. No, Luna said, sitting beside me. You tried to do the right thing. The fact that some people chose corruption over justice does not make you wrong for fighting for what is right. but I could not shake the feeling that I had lost everything. My family had been criminals, but now they knew I was trying to expose them. Rodriguez had betrayed me for money. The FBI case was compromised. And I was potentially facing legal retaliation for trying to seek justice. As I lay awake that night staring at Luna's ceiling, I wondered if this was how the story would end, with the bad guys winning and me paying the price for trying to do the right thing. I spent 3 days in a depression so deep I could barely function. Agent Martinez had advised me to maintain minimal contact while they reassessed the case, which left me feeling helpless and isolated. Then on Saturday morning, Luna burst into her apartment with excitement I had not seen from her in weeks. "Sarah, you need to see this," she said, waving her laptop. "I have been doing some research on Rodriguez and I found something incredible." She opened her computer and showed me a news article from 6 months ago. Detective Rodriguez was investigated by the state licensing board for evidence tampering in 3 separate cases. She was facing suspension of her private investigator license. I stared at the screen. She never mentioned any of this, because she knew it would destroy her credibility. But look at this. Luna clicked to another article. One of those cases involved a custody dispute where she was accused of fabricating surveillance evidence in exchange for payment from one of the parties. The implications hit me immediately. If Rodriguez has a history of tampering with evidence for money that completely undermines her credibility with Tom's legal team. Luna grinned. Exactly. And it gets better. I found court records showing she owes over $40,000 in legal fees from defending against those previous accusations. That $50,000 from Tom was not just a windfall, it was desperately needed money to keep her from bankruptcy. I grabbed Luna's hands. This proves her testimony is worthless. She is a compromised witness with a clear financial motive to lie. But we need to get this information to Agent Martinez immediately. When I called Agent Martinez with the new information about Rodriguez, her excitement was obvious. This changes everything. A witness with a documented history of evidence tampering who was facing financial ruin when she accepted payment from suspects. Any decent defense attorney would tear her apart on cross-examination. So, where does this leave our case? It means Rodriguez's betrayal might actually work in our favor. If she testifies that your evidence was fabricated, we can destroy her credibility by exposing her history and financial motivation. In fact, her involvement might make the case stronger by showing how desperate your family was to cover up their crimes. But Agent Martinez had even better news. We have also been building the case from another angle you do not know about yet. Remember Mrs. Vasquez? She connected us with her neighbor, Robert Kim, who happens to be a forensic accountant. He has been reviewing Tom's business records voluntarily, and what he found is extraordinary. Robert Kim turned out to be a soft-spoken man in his 50s who had recently retired from the Internal Revenue Service. When Agent Martinez arranged for us to meet, he brought 2 thick binders of analysis. "I have spent 30 years investigating financial crimes for the government," he said. "What your stepfather and family have been doing is not just fraud, it is remarkably sophisticated fraud that suggests this is not their first criminal enterprise." He opened the first binder, showing me spreadsheets and charts that looked like something from a forensic accounting textbook. The pattern of invoice manipulation, the timing of money transfers, the way they have structured their business accounts to obscure money flow. This shows knowledge of financial systems that goes far beyond what a small construction company owner would typically know. Agent Martinez leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I think Tom has done this before, probably multiple times. The techniques he is using are too sophisticated for someone learning as they go." Kim opened the second binder. I did some additional research on Tom's background. Before starting his construction company, he worked for a larger construction firm in Nevada. That company was investigated for contractor fraud 5 years ago, but the investigation was closed due to insufficient evidence. My heart started racing. You think he learned these techniques at his previous job? I think he was likely involved in the Nevada fraud and moved here to start fresh when things got too hot there. The methods are nearly identical. Agent Martinez was taking notes furiously. "Can you prove this connection?" With subpoena power, absolutely. Financial records from the Nevada company employment records, client complaints, it would all create a pattern showing this is a career criminal, not someone who made poor decisions during tough economic times. This revelation transformed everything. We were not dealing with a family that had gotten desperate and made bad choices. We were dealing with a professional criminal who had moved to a new location to run the same scam, and who had recruited his new wife and stepson into the operation. There is something else, Kim continued. The way Marcus's role has been structured in the business suggests he was being groomed for this from the beginning. Tom did not just give his stepson a job, he systematically taught him specific skills for running financial scams. I thought about all the times Marcus had talked about learning the business, how proud Tom and my mother had been of his business acumen. They had not just been encouraging a young man's career development, they had been training a protege in criminal methods. What kind of evidence would we need to prove this pattern? Agent Martinez asked. Client complaints from Nevada employment records showing Tom's access to financial systems at his previous company, bank records showing the pattern of money movement, and ideally testimony from other victims or witnesses from the Nevada operation. Agent Martinez nodded. We can get most of that through federal subpoenas. This gives us a much stronger case than we had before. But Kim had saved the best for last. I also found something else while analyzing their current operation. They have been making a crucial mistake over the past 6 months. He showed me a series of bank transfers highlighted in yellow. They have been moving money into offshore accounts, but they have been using a pattern that creates a clear paper trail. Every transfer happens exactly 72 hours after a fraudulent invoice is paid. It is like they were following a manual. Agent Martinez studied the transfers. This proves intent to hide criminal proceeds. It proves more than that, Kim said. It proves they knew what they were doing was illegal and were taking steps to hide the money from detection. That eliminates any possible defense of innocent mistake or poor business practices. I stared at the evidence spread across the table: bank records, transfer patterns, employment histories, client complaints. After Rodriguez's betrayal, I had thought our case was destroyed. Now I realized we had built something much stronger. So, where do we go from here? I asked. Agent Martinez smiled. Now we spring our own trap. Your family thinks they have neutralized the threat by buying off Rodriguez and learning about our evidence. They have no idea we have been building a parallel case that Rodriguez knew nothing about. What does that mean for me? It means you get to decide how this ends. We have enough evidence to arrest all 3 of them immediately. Or, if you want to see them face the consequences of their arrogance, we can let them think they have won, while we prepare an even stronger case. I thought about Marcus's threatening text message, my mother's condescending voice, when I had called to apologize, Tom's obvious pleasure at having manipulated the situation in his favor. They thought they had beaten me by buying off Rodriguez and intimidating me into silence. I want them to face the full consequences of everything they have done, I said. Every victim they have cheated, every lie they have told, every crime they have committed. I want them to understand that justice is not something you can buy your way out of. Kim nodded approvingly. In that case, we have a lot of work to do. The federal task force operation took place on a Tuesday morning in March, exactly 2 months after Rodriguez's betrayal. I watched from Agent Martinez's car as FBI agents simultaneously executed search warrants at Tom's business, their home, and Marcus's apartment. The choreographed precision was beautiful to witness. Agent Martinez had offered me the choice of being present for the arrests, but I declined. I want to hear about it afterward, I had said, when it is over and justice has been served. The call came at 11:30 that morning. All 3 are in custody, Agent Martinez reported. Tom, Patricia, and Marcus were arrested without incident. We seized computers, financial records, and over $60,000 in cash that was hidden in a safe in your mother's bedroom. The evidence Kim had helped us gather was devastating. Federal prosecutors filed charges including wire fraud, mail fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and racketeering. The Nevada connection had proven even more extensive than we initially thought. Tom had been part of a multi-state construction fraud operation that had cheated hundreds of families over a decade. My mother's role as the coordinator of the local operation earned her additional charges for conspiracy and financial crimes. Marcus, despite his age, was charged as an adult due to the sophisticated nature of his involvement and the amount of money involved. The court proceedings took 8 months. During that time, I testified before 2 grand juries and provided evidence that helped prosecutors secure indictments. The hardest part was testifying about the family dynamics, explaining how they had manipulated my love and loyalty to fund their criminal enterprise. Mrs. Vasquez attended every court hearing along with 11 other victims we had identified. Seeing all of them together in the courtroom, families and elderly people who had been cheated by the people I had called family, reinforced that justice was necessary, regardless of personal cost. Rodriguez's attempted testimony backfired spectacularly. When Tom's defense team called her as a witness to claim I had fabricated evidence, the prosecution destroyed her credibility by exposing her history of evidence tampering and the $50,000 payment she had received from Tom. The judge ruled her testimony inadmissible and referred her case to the state bar for investigation. Kim's analysis proved crucial in demonstrating the sophisticated nature of the fraud. His testimony showed this was not desperate people making poor choices, but career criminals running a carefully planned operation designed to steal from vulnerable clients. The sentencing hearing was held on a cold December morning. Tom received 12 years in federal prison. My mother received 8 years. Marcus, despite his attorney's arguments about his youth and manipulation by older family members, received 6 years due to his active role in cheating clients and his threatening behavior toward victims who complained. I chose not to make a victim impact statement. My testimony during the trial had said everything I needed to say about how their betrayal had affected me. Instead, I sat quietly in the gallery with Luna, Mrs. Vasquez, and Kim watching justice finally being served. After the sentencing, Mrs. Vasquez approached me in the courthouse hallway. At 82, she had attended every hearing despite her advanced age and health issues. "I want you to know something," she said, taking my hands in hers. "What you did took incredible courage. You sacrificed your family to protect people you did not even know. That is the definition of heroism." I started crying in that courthouse hallway, not from sadness, but from relief. For over a year, I had questioned whether I had done the right thing by exposing my family's crimes. Mrs. Vasquez's words finally gave me peace. Kim had become an unexpected mentor throughout the process. After the sentencing, he offered me a position at his consulting firm helping other fraud victims seek justice. "You have a natural ability to see through financial deception," he said. "And you understand both the criminal mindset and the victim's perspective. That combination is rare and valuable." Luna had been my rock throughout the entire ordeal, but our friendship had deepened into something even stronger. She had never wavered in her support, even when supporting me meant facing potential retaliation from my family. The night after the sentencing, she made dinner at her apartment to celebrate. "So what happens now?" she asked as we sat on her couch, finally able to relax after months of stress. "Now I build a new life," I said. "A life based on truth instead of lies, justice instead of manipulation, chosen family instead of blood relatives who never really valued me." Over the following months, I discovered what chosen family really means. Mrs. Vasquez became like a grandmother to me, inviting me for Sunday dinners and sharing stories about her late husband and the life they had built together. Kim became a professional mentor who taught me not just about financial crimes, but about using skills and knowledge to protect people who cannot protect themselves. Luna and I eventually moved in together, not as roommates, but as family who had chosen each other through the worst circumstances and emerged stronger. We created traditions, supported each other's dreams, and built the kind of loving, honest relationship I had always thought families were supposed to have. The construction company's assets were sold to pay restitution to victims. Mrs. Vasquez received full compensation for her overcharged invoice plus damages. all the identified victims recovered most of their losses, though nothing could completely repair the violation of trust they had experienced. I never had contact with my mother, Tom, or Marcus after their arrest. They each sent letters from prison, my mother asking for forgiveness and claiming she had been manipulated by Tom, Marcus blaming his youth and poor influences, Tom maintaining his innocence and claiming the prosecution was based on falsified evidence. I read each letter once and threw them away. Their words were just more manipulation, more attempts to avoid responsibility for choices they had made. They had shown me who they truly were when they demanded I apologize for asking honest questions. Everything that followed was simply the consequence of their own actions. 2 years after the sentencing, I was promoted to senior investigator at Kim's firm. We had helped dozens of fraud victims seek justice and recovery. Each case reminded me that standing up for truth and protecting vulnerable people was worth any personal cost. Last month, Mrs. Vasquez celebrated her 84th birthday. Luna Kim, his wife, and I gathered at her house for cake and stories. As I looked around that table at people who had chosen to love and support each other rather than exploit each other, I realized something profound. The family that had raised me had taught me that love was conditional, loyalty could be bought, and truth was negotiable. The family I had chosen taught me that real love means protecting each other. Real loyalty means standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult, and truth is the foundation that everything else is built on. My revenge story became something much more important than just exposing criminals. It became a story about discovering what family really means, what justice really costs, and what happens when you choose integrity over comfort. Have you ever had to choose between loyalty to people who hurt you and protecting innocent strangers who needed your help? Have you ever discovered that the people you trusted most were the ones betraying you all along? I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is holding people accountable for their actions, even when those people are family. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that choosing justice over family loyalty is sometimes the right choice. Hit that like button if you believe that truth and integrity matter more than maintaining comfortable lies. Subscribe for more stories about real people facing impossible choices and finding the courage to do what is right. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have been able to turn in your own family to protect strangers? Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that the family you choose can be stronger than the family you were born into, and that justice delayed is not justice denied, as long as someone is willing to fight for it. May your own journey lead you toward people who love you for who you truly are, not what you can provide them.